more people will come and join us. Some people in the fellowship still. Um, what time is it now? 45? So let's start. Hopefully, people will join us. You want to wait? Let's start. Um, we have started TCI, Transforming Church Inside TCI program 3 years ago. And as you know, there are many good things coming out of that program under the guidance of the Holy Spirit first and John. And we did a survey in the month of September and October for 4 weeks, and we have result, and John is going to help us to review this morning. So thank you, John, for coming to Mequon UMC. So now we are all yours.
Well, thank you very much for the opportunity to kind of walk you through. You did this exact same survey in 2021, and you took it in September. So it's like 3 years, after you had started this whole program. And these are always very important, because this is one way, and only one way, you can evaluate the effectiveness of all the work that you have invested in this process. And what we want to learn from these follow-up TCIs is, where have you kind of gained some ground and some traction, and where haven't you? And some churches do well in certain areas and not so well in others. Some kind of struggle altogether, and some do quite well. And you are in that last category. As we compare 2021's results to 2022 or 2024 results, you did some really good work, and it's very exciting to see. So I just want to walk you through the comparisons of those two, and I'll kind of walk you through, and then we can do questions at the end, unless they're kind of clarifying questions of what I'm presenting. So let's start out, let's go ahead and go to the next slide. And here, what we have is your score percentile and your score. And then the number of completed surveys. First of all, I want you to look at the bottom, the number of completed surveys. You had more people take the survey this time than originally. That's really important. I don't think you've grown that much. So what that tells me is that people were more interested in speaking into it. That's a positive thing, okay? Yeah. Oh, I've got those backwards. Sorry. The years are backwards. Thank you. Sorry. Thanks for showing that. In any case, the wonderful thing here is that you've got good participation. Then if you look at the church score, this is on a 5-point scale, right? All of the questions, you are given a positive statement, and you gave it a 1 if you strongly disagreed, 2 if you disagreed, 3 if it was neutral, you gave it a 4 if you agreed with that positive statement, and a 5 if it was strongly agreed. And you increased your score. Now, it doesn't look like it's much, but then look at the percentile. Now, let me explain what percentile is. When we take your score and compare it to the tens of thousands that are in our database of other churches, that's your percentile score. So you went from the 28th percentile to the 65th percentile, meaning When you took it in 2021, 72% of the churches in our database scored themselves higher than you all scored yourselves. So that was kind of low. 28th percentile is kind of low. Now you're in the 65th percentile, which means 64% of the churches in our database scored themselves lower than you all. To go from 28th percentile to 65th percentile in 3 years is amazing. It really is. It really tells me that you've invested positively in who you are and who you're becoming, and in those strategies that you put together. So this one slide here is just huge. So we love it, love it. So let's take a look more specifically. Good. Those are the 15 facets that are measured. I want you to notice that you went up in every single facet. Wow. Yeah, that's a wow. In 3 years. Now, change, we say in our work, change takes 3 to 5 years. So we would say you're only on the beginning of your change. Right? The first 3 years are kind of, who are we? What are we about? Where do we want to invest? How do we do this? And you kind of get ready to, to really start living it out. And so for you to go up in every single facet is big. Now I want to point out a couple of these that are just really huge. Connectedness, you went up 53 percentile points. That's the area you grew in the most. Connectedness is how are people feeling connected to who you are and what you're doing. And we would say it's one of the most important of all the facets. Because if people don't feel connected to who you are and what you're about, they're not investing. They're not giving of themselves. They're not kind of feeling a part of the community. So the work you've done here has been clearly to invite people to participate, to invite people to be a part of who you are and what you're doing. And people are saying, I'm feeling more connected. So that's great. The next highest kind of improvement was in vision. We really hope to see that because that's the core of kind of how you improve, right? By having a good vision, by knowing that vision. That tells me that you've been able to cast that vision and instill it in who you are and what you're about, which we would say is very, very important. So really great work there. Your next one, in terms of the largest growth, was in ownership. Ownership is very similar to connectedness, except ownership goes a little deeper. Ownership says, I'm important. I make a difference. When I speak, people listen, and it makes a difference. When I serve, it makes a difference. So I'm not just a participant here, I'm an owner, right? I'm part of making this church function well. I'm part of living out the mission. So that was the next one. And then finally, the fifth highest growth area was in families. That's ministry to children, youth, and families. And so those were really, your top growth areas. So that's very, very exciting. Any questions about any of these? Okay. Let's go to the next slide. Oh, I should have had that up before. So that's a slide, and I'll email you this this presentation so that you can send it out. So let's go to the next slide. Okay, this is comparing 2021 to 2024, your top 5 scores. That's just raw score out of 5. Okay? In 2021, finances was number 1, relationships, families, ownership, and then your building. Now, it'll sound strange. We never want to see the building in the top 5. Because we know through our research and working with thousands of congregations that you can have a vibrant ministry in a horrible building and a horrible location. And that the health of a church literally has nothing to do with your facility. Now, facility is a tool, right? It can support everything, but if you don't have the vision, you don't have the ministries impacting people's lives, you don't have the outreach, you don't have all those other things, you could have the greatest building ever. My first call out of seminary was in a dying congregation that had the most beautiful, clean, shiny building ever. They had a janitor that would strip and wax the floors 4 times a year. Really, it was the cleanest church I'd ever been in, and it was dying. So we don't really want to see building there. Notice in 2024, building is no longer there. We have families that have jumped to number 1. That's your highest score. Wow. That's great, right? Especially as you're struggling, as all churches are after the pandemic, right? And we're struggling with the families, we're struggling with sports, competing with sports and all the other things you know as well as anybody. To see families jump to number 1 is great. Now that went from 3 to 1, but still, that's just great. Relationships stayed at number 2. Ownership jumped up a little bit. And then finances dropped down to 4. Now remember, it still went up, right? So it's not like that's a bad thing. And then involvement. These are people saying, I'm involved in an outreach ministry. I'm involved in a Bible study. I'm involved in a small group. I'm involved in a committee. I'm involved, So that's critically important to the health and well-being of a church, a high involvement score. It was not in the top 5 before. It's now in the top 5. We love to see involvement coming in there and building coming off. Because involvement's way more important. So again, that is such a positive. Okay. Let's go to the next slide. All right, these are questions that all were in the 90th percentile as compared to other churches or higher. Okay? I just wanted to show you, these are your kind of strongest areas. So as we look at these, I'm going to have to kind of turn around to read them here. So we have, our church effectively meets the needs of seniors. That's really important because you have a lot of seniors. And if, you can build on that. You take a strength and you build on it. So continue to do those ministries to seniors. I have a clearly defined role in the church. That's ownership, that's involvement, that's connectedness. I have a role here. I'm important here. That's great. 96 percentile. Only 4% of the churches scored themselves higher in our database than you all scored yourself there. That's great. All right, next one. I have a clear understanding of my role in fulfilling the church's mission. So that's even a more defined understanding of role. I'm connected to the mission of the purpose and mission of this church. Very important. Next one. I have participated in an outreach event sponsored by the church within the last 12 months. You said in your strategy that outreach was really important. And you knew you had to get out into the community, that you had to serve the needs of the community. To have this high percentile is really great. It really tells me that the work you've invested is paying off. People are doing those outreach things. So that is wonderful. My church is outreaching. Wow. People know that part of the identity of this church is your outreach. And I want to tell you, when we do research about what young people, whether they're in their late teens or up to, mid-30s, what they want in a spiritual community is to make a difference in the world. That's more important than good worship. It's, can I use my life through this church to make a difference in the world, in my local community and beyond? So as you're looking to grow, as you're looking to connect to younger people, your outreach is going to be really important. So that's great. Your next one. I have a clear sense of how decisions are made in the church. That's very important. If people are feeling disconnected to the decision-making processes, they're not feeling good. They're thinking, oh, somebody else is making the decisions. I'm not a part of that. I don't, But now if I know the process for decision-making, I can speak into it. So that's a really good one. Let's go to the next slide. We have a few more here. Our buildings and facilities are effective in supporting our children's ministries. So that's important. The next one, the church effectively meets the needs of children. 91st percentiles compared to other churches. Only 9% of the churches scored themselves higher when it came to children's ministries than you did. Now, I'm sure you would say, I wish our numbers were bigger in our children's ministries. But to know that they are that effective with the children and the parents, obviously, that you have here, means you have potential to grow that. Because it's a good, effective children's ministry. You can't grow unless they're effective. So that's always the first step. So that's great. Next one, I feel cared for by a leader in this church. To feel that leaders care about me. Very important. We don't come here to be disconnected or not cared for. We come into community because we need care, we need love, we need connection, we need all those things. And to know that leaders are doing that is pretty important. So again, really great. I'm valuable around here. My actions influence the church around here. I'm important around here. You group all those together. Really great. Okay? And then the church is a fellowship, and the church is close-knit. One of the things when we get into the strengths of the church, when you kind of wrote things down, you were asked to describe in one word the church, and the top three were being a church that is caring, loving, and welcoming. That's what that's all about. So that's really superb. In short, you guys just have invested 3 years and it's paying off. Okay? And you're now in the 65th percentiles compared to other churches in our database. And that's churches all over the country. Churches that are small, churches that are large, churches that are conservative, churches that are liberal. I mean, it's really compared to everything. And, you say, oh, gosh, I wish we were higher than 65th percentile. You went from 28th to 65th in 3 years. If you were to keep investing and keep doing the work you're doing and build on all this good work that, has obviously begun to pay off, you're going to continue to grow in your impact and your success in fulfilling your mission. So when I got these results, it's always, it's always a little anxious time for a consultant. Okay, have they done, work? Do we see any good positive stuff? And what we're looking for is a few areas. You had it in every area. Really, in the 3 years, you've done as well as any church could do. And it may not feel like it because your hopes and dreams are bigger than where you are now. And by the way, that's a good thing. When I was a pastor of a growing church, we had grown from worshiping 120 to worshiping 560 in 5 years. It was just explosive growth. And I was talking to one of our leaders about a new ministry that I felt we needed to consider. She said to me, "You're just never satisfied, are you?" And I said, "Nope. God always has more in store for us. Always has more in store for us. And if we have the energy and the focus and the ability to know what that is, that's just fun." And I really mean that. So, one of the things is sometimes our hopes and dreams and our visions are what I call BHAGs, big, hairy, audacious goals, right? Kind of, they do two things. They can motivate us, but they can also kind of depress us, like, oh, we're not there. What I want to say to you all is all these results should say, you guys are moving in the right direction. You're doing a lot that's right. Keep doing it, and you're going to keep making progress. So don't forget, and this is something churches don't do well, don't forget to celebrate your wins on a regular basis. Talk about the impact of your outreach. Talk about your children's ministry. Make sure people who are not connected to your children's ministry know what's going on and how it's impacting your children and the families, the parents. Tell the stories over and over of your mission to yourselves. Because you need to know, because the grind day in, day out, week in, week out of ministry can somehow, cover all your successes up because you're looking at the small details and not all the big, great things you're doing. So, let's go to the next slide. It's questions. Do you have any questions or thoughts about this? Yeah. Yes. Right. That's why I do this. I'll send that to Pastor. Yep. And I will clean up that one slide before I do it. Oh, you think it's correct? Yeah, those dates were wrong. Oh, you think that is correct? Okay, so maybe I got that wrong. Maybe I had it wrong in my memory. Yes. Oh. Oh, okay. I'll double check that and get it correct, whatever it is. Yeah, I'll get it correct, whatever it is. Yeah. Oh, thanks. Thanks. Yes. Yes. Sure. So we walk through the dimensions. The first one is community. And it really is about whether you're building relationships that are significant, one-on-one, and you're building relationships between the people and the ministry. Okay? So it's connectedness, it's a bunch of different things. And community is really about how people are feeling. They're not, what we don't want is people to come in, sit in the back, go home, and not feel that they're part of the community. So that's one of those dimensions. The next one is code. This has everything to do with, do you know your code? That's your mission, your core values, those kinds of things. And are you a part of making that happen? Okay? One of the things we know is that we want most of your people to know your core values and your mission. And if we can, your strategies that you're presently working on, whatever those are, and those change. Okay? We don't think your core values and your mission really change much. I mean, they can over time, but that's very slow. And so what we did with you all is we discovered your code, named it, and said, how do we lean into it? So that's what that measures. The next one is calling, and that's really about leadership. Are your leaders understanding what it means to be a leader of a church? And it really changes in terms of church size. So if you look at the individual questions, larger churches, the leaders function differently than in a smaller church. Okay? And we have questions that kind of parse that out. And are your leaders leading in a way that people trust, that they value, and that they're connected to the leaders? And then finance is a part of that, and it's interesting, finances, the questions, I don't know if you remember, they have nothing to do whether or not you have a lot of money or you have a lot of debt. It has to do with, do people feel they know how and why you're spending money? And do people feel and know that the way you're spending money is connected to your mission? So it's more about how you do your finances than whether you have a lot of money or not a lot of money. So the next one is cause. Those are your ministries that impact people, right? So you see the facets there: outreach, families, and involvement, right? So it's both internal, families and involvement. So families, again, is everything from seniors to children and everything in between. And involvement, those are internal. The outreach is the external. But they're all about cause, purpose, making a difference in people's lives. And then finally, change. how willing and able are you to embrace change? Churches are the worst at change. And this whole 3-year process has been about change. How do we bring the right change, given where the church is, that will propel the church forward in a very focused way? And can you embrace that? Can the people embrace that? Right? Or are you still fighting change? So those are the dimensions. Thanks for the question. Other questions? Yeah.
In the survey, is there any question on the front or back that allows the respondent, say I'm a repeat respondent, I'm a new respondent?
No.
Because we've had a lot of changes, it'd really be interesting how the scores, if you had enough meaningful data,
Right.
change for those that are repeating versus those that are brand new.
Yeah, that would be wonderful to know. We don't have that question.
That doesn't identify what it just says.
Right.
It might be something you consider.
Right. Yeah. There's also another, when we there's an advanced form of this survey where we ask things like your age, how long you've been a member of the church, your race, all those different things. And so in that advanced survey, I know it's 120 questions. You think, oh, an advanced survey, it's even more questions. We then could parse that out, but we don't ask that question. That's interesting. It would be interesting to know, yeah. Yeah. Other questions? Well, let me just finish by saying I'm so excited to see these results. I knew you were making some good, progress, that you were, kind of moving in positive ways. And like I said, this is only one way we measure. You've got to look at your ministries. You've got to talk to the people you're being impacting, out in the community, all those things to really know. And I'm sure you have your, challenges, even though these are great scores. Every organization has challenges. But you should feel very good about what you've done, and just keep investing, and you'll continue to improve. And by the way, rarely do we see this kind of across the board positive result in the first 3 years. So great work, just great work. So thank you. Yes.
Another question. Talk about the 90th percentile.
Uh-huh.
Ones that fell in that category.
Uh-huh.
Report tabulate those that are 50 percentile.
Oh, sure. Every question is, I could give you the... Yeah, yeah. So I can send that report. We don't always send every, minute detail report, part of the report. Well, that's it. We don't want you to focus on the negatives. We want you to focus on the positives, because you'll be more successful in fulfilling your mission if you lean into your strengths first, instead of looking at your negatives. Does that make sense? You always say, well, if we can fix the things that are not going, well, somehow we'll be better off. But the research shows us that if you lean into the things you're already doing well and go from good to great, that makes a bigger difference in your ministry. That every ministry will have things that you don't do well. Every ministry.
Maybe you should stop doing those things.
Well, sometimes, yeah. Or you should stop obsessing over the lower scores, right? And it would depend on the question. How important is that question? We would say if it has to do with mission, or it has to do with relationships or people or connectedness, those kinds of things are kind of core. If it has to do with, I don't like our building, or whatever, then those are less important. But I'll send that report as well. So, yeah. Other questions? All right, well, thank you very much. And we'll be